right. Let's begin. So my plan is to go over fall 2023 final exam that's posted on Learning Suite. However, we can do whatever you guys want. I really don't care. So if you have more pressing things, if you have questions, you can ask me. There's like a specific part of the other final exam. I can also look at it and try and answer it. It's really up to you guys. Because I don't have to take the final.
Have you seen the final?
Nope. Dr. Yin does not share that information. So after you guys have taken it. So I guess this time I'll see it while you guys are taking it.
Do you want the other lights on?
Yeah, that'd be great. So, does anybody have a strong opinion? Do you want to work on the long answers on fall 2023?
Yeah.
Or do you want to do consumption long answer questions?
Yes, we can. Anybody else have a strong opinion?
I think short answer
Is it from 11 to 2 on Saturday?
Which section?
12:30.
Is it section 2 or 3?
Section 2.
Okay, so
Thank
it's
you.
11 to 2 on Saturday. The other one is
Monday, 2 to 5.
2 to 5 or 2:30 to 5?
2:30 to
I'll
5:30.
tell you exactly what it is so nobody shows up late.
This one.
So section 2 is Monday or is Saturday from 11 to 2, and section 3 is Monday from 2:30 to 5:30 in the library, in your regular classroom. Okay? So don't go to the testing center. They will not have your test there.
So
All right. What, Lauren, is there one of those questions on the fall 2023 test?
Question 2.
Is that not a Fisher 2-period model?
That's the consumption.
Is that the one you're referring to? Okay, yeah, we can do that one. We'll start with that one. Anybody else?
I
Yes.
think we do number 1 on the test too.
Yeah, we can do number 1 after. Strong feelings about number 3? Or would you prefer to do the short answer after?
Should we read the whole House of Debt book?
Can we read it? No. There's this great invention called Google Gemini that can synthesize information at alarmingly fast speeds. All right, so we'll do number 2, and then we'll do number 1, and then we'll do the short answer, and then whatever time we'll just keep going. All right? Sound like a good plan? All right. So number 2. Oh yeah. So these questions, they honestly are less conceptual and more, if I'm being completely honest, are algebraic. There's a lot of ways you can mess up just algebraically, but the conceptual ideas aren't too complex, so that's a good thing. So in number 2, on the second long answer on the fall 2023 final, it says, consider the following Fisher 2-period model. An individual lives for 2 periods. In the first period, she gets income y1 equals 100. And in the second period, she gets income y2 equals 90. We're just going to assume that after period 2, they die. All right? The interest rate is 10%, so r equals 0.1. And their individual utility is given by the following utility function. U of C1 and C2 equals natural log of C1 plus the natural log of C2. All right? So, the first thing that we want to do, the first part A asks for, to solve for the level of consumption period 1, that the individual will choose, then ask if they're a borrower or a saver. So, whenever you read a question that says something like, what level are they going to choose of consumption or of savings or of, I don't know, income? I don't know. What does that sound like you should do? Sounds like you should maximize, because a person's going to want to maximize whatever it is, or minimize if it's something bad. So, we are going to maximize. We will maximize this utility function. We are going to maximize with respect to C1 and C2, and be the natural log of C1 plus the natural log of C2. All right. So, we also have certain constraints that we're going to maximize with respect to. One of them is that our Y1 is going to equal our consumption in the first period plus whatever we save, right? That will equal our total income that we have, right? Because we're either consuming or we're saving. So those are the only two options. So if we sum those together, that gives us however much we have in period 1. And then we also have that our consumption in the second period is going to be whatever we save plus however much we make off of the markets, because we could invest this. There's interest. That's why we have an interest rate. Whatever they save is going to be garnering an interest rate as well. So it's the savings will go up proportionally to the interest rate that we have, plus whatever income we have in the second period. Notice that these two are the same thing, just written in different orders, and we have a 1 plus R in our savings in the second period because we can generate interest on our savings. Questions about that? No? Perfect. So we can write this all as a function of C1 in order to take the derivative, because that's what the question asks us for. So we can write this as the max of C1 of the natural log of C1 plus the natural log, and then we can just plug in this equation right here of 1 plus R times S plus Y2. Okay, we're just plugging in, so now we can take a derivative with respect to C1. We don't have to do with partial derivatives or anything, because those are no fun. And then we'll take our first order condition. So, derivative of the natural log is whatever is inside, take the derivative of it, and then stick that on top of whatever is inside. So, derivative of C1 with respect to C1 is just 1. And then whatever is inside is C1. So the derivative of the natural log of C1 is 1 over C1. All right. Now, we'll take the derivative of this.
And you plug in the y minus c1 for s.
Yes, we do need to plug that in first. So let me write it one more time. The max of C1 of the natural log of C1 plus the natural log of 1 plus R, and then we know S is equal to Y1 minus C1 plus Y2. Perfect. Now we can do it since everything is in terms of C1. Okay. So we take the derivative of the natural log of C1, you get 1 over C1 plus, and then now we have this whole thing, all right? The good thing is this is not a variable that we're deriving with respect to, so it just acts as a constant. This 1 plus R is the same thing as well, all right? So we will take the derivative of this inside, and that's going to be the top part of our fraction. So we're going to have a 1 plus R, because that's just a constant, we don't care about it, and we get a negative 1 from this right here. Right, take the derivative of this with respect to C1 is a negative 1. This becomes 0. And on the bottom, we just stick this entire thing on the bottom. 1 plus R, Y1 minus C1 plus Y2. Sorry, am I blocking your guys' view? Slightly. All right. Any questions on how I took a derivative there? Am I writing big enough for everyone to see? Perfect. Are there any questions about taking a derivative when there's a natural log involved? Because I can almost guarantee you will have to do it on the final.
So just one quick, sorry if you already went over this, but like the y1 minus c1, how does that become a negative 1 when you take the derivative of that part specifically?
So we're driving with respect to C1.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say,
Oh wait, you just dropped the y1, huh?
well, let's say if I wanted to take the derivative of 1 minus x with respect to x, what would that be?
1.
It'd be negative 1. Yeah, so anything we're not deriving with respect to is just treated as a constant.
Right.
So the derivative of y1 with respect to c1 is 0.
So that makes sense.
All right, and then obviously we have to set this equal to 0. We'll move it over to the other side. Now we need to solve for C1. So we're going to have 1 over C1 equals, this is negative right here, so it'll be positive on the other side. And the 1 over R, and the 1 over R will cancel out in the numerator and the denominator, so we're just going to be left with 1 over y1 minus c1 plus y2 on the other side.
Why do we cancel out the 1 plus r with the 1 plus r if there's not a 1 plus r term in the plus y too?
You're right, you can. Okay, let's look at that. Now we are going to multiply, cross multiply. So we will get, on this side, we're going to get 1 plus r, y1 minus c1 plus y2 equals 1 plus r times c1. Cross multiply to the other side. And then, do you guys want me to work out the rest of the algebra? Do we care to look at the rest of the algebra? No? Okay, so you just solve for C1, whatever that is, will be your answer. So, in this one specifically, you get C1 equals 90.91. Alright? So, is this person going to be a borrower or a saver?
Saver.
Why are they a saver?
Because their consumption is less than their income.
Perfect. Their income is 100 in period 1, and they're only spending 90, so it will save whatever that they don't spend. All right, questions? No? Perfect. Let's move on to part B. All right, part B says, suppose the government is concerned that people aren't saving enough, so they impose a policy similar to Social Security. In other words, they tax people's income when they are young at tax rate tau equals 0.4, then they pay them back this money when they are old at tau times your income in period 1. You can think of this as forced savings. So their maximization decision now becomes the following. We want to maximize the same utility function that we had, the natural log of C1 plus the natural log of C2, however we're going to do it with respect to C1, C2, and S as well. Because now we have another factor that we need to think about. It's also given to us in the problem that we have certain constraints, and these constraints are 1 minus tau times y1 equals C1 plus S, as well as C2 equals 1 plus R S plus Y2 plus tau Y1. All right. So we're going to do the same thing. It has to solve for the level of consumption in period 1 that they're going to choose. So we'll do the same thing. We're going to plug in these constraints that we have into our utility functions. So once again, we are going to have max of the natural log of C1 plus the natural log of C2. For C2, we will first plug in this, which is going to be 1 plus R times S plus Y2 plus tau Y1. And then we will now plug in for savings there, which we can just move this to the other side. Move the C1 into the other side. So we'll have 1 plus R times, this will be 1 minus tau Y1 minus C1 plus Y2 plus tau y1. Questions on what I just did? So the first two steps are always the same. You take your utility function, then you need to substitute in your constraints. And it's usually going to have two steps. So you can get from C2 to S, and then S to C1. If it asks, obviously, to solve for C1. It'll be different if it asks to solve for C2. You just do it going towards C2, all right? So now we're going to take the derivative of this lovely equation. This is with respect to C1. So this is the same as last time. You just get 1 over C1. That one's the easy one. For this one, it's going to be a big, long fraction, all right? So first we'll take the derivative of what's inside here. You can just start by writing this entire thing on the bottom, because that's not going to change. 1 minus tau y1 plus c1 plus y2 plus tau y1. All right? If you don't know how to do it, at least just write what's inside of the natural log on the very bottom of the fraction, and you're halfway there. Okay. Now, we'll take the derivative of this inside portion. Remember, the 1 plus r is a constant, and it's being multiplied onto something that has a c1 term in it, so this will stay. And the derivative of this is the same thing as last time, even though this is messier, it's just -1, because this doesn't have a c1 in it, so we get -1 right there. This doesn't have a c1, and that doesn't have a c1, so it's just 0 when we take the derivative. All right, then set it equal to 0, and you do the exact same thing that you did on the last one. Do you want me to do the algebra? Just don't cancel the 1 plus r's like I accidentally did. No? Good. So for this one, you end up with C1 equals 89.09, I believe. So if you want to check your work. Yes?
Why can't you cancel out the 1 plus r's again?
Because you have this addition right here. And so there would need to be 1 plus r over here as well, so you can cancel out from all the terms.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Are they a borrower or a saver this time around? What does anyone think? Borrower. Or are they a borrower?
Because it says. Because she spends more than she makes.
Or just negative savings?
Or she has negative savings. Yeah, that's the same thing.
Known as dis savings.
Also known as dis savings. That's correct. Perfect. Let's look at part C now. Any questions on part C? Yes.
Why is she capitalized?
Where is she capitalized?
In part B, the level of savings she chooses.
Well,
It's divine.
I don't know why he's emphasizing the she part of that sentence. I don't know. Okay, let's move on to part C. So part C says, suppose the agent faces a borrowing constraint, meaning their savings has to be greater than or equal to 0. They cannot go into debt. Is this person made better or worse off because of this new policy? And then it says why, and it says hint utility. All right? So, they no longer can do what they did in part B because they can't have negative savings, right? They cannot borrow money. They're constrained now. So what we just did, all this math, now no longer applies in part C. And so it's asking how this new policy or effect constraint is going to affect this person. So she is going to choose, let me erase this. So she is going to choose the point. We know what her income was last time, it was 60. She is going to choose a point where her C1, which equals 1 minus tau y1 equals 60, right? Because that is the most she can consume without going into debt, all right? And then we know that her consumption in the second period is going to equal her income in the second period plus her tau times the y1, the income that she had. So her consumption in the second period is going to be 130. All right, so you can plug these in to the utility equation that it just gives you at the start, and you'll get out some numbers. And based off of those numbers, you will get her utility. Let's see. So you have two options after you do this in order to solve this. One, you could notice that in the initial case, which was part A, before this policy was implemented, she was a staver, so the borrowing constraint would not change her decision in part A, right? So we can check to see if they would have preferred part A, but just didn't choose it because she didn't get as much utility from it. If she consumed 60 in period 1, say right here, then she would have saved, let's see, saying 0. She wouldn't have saved anything, right? Which would be her S. That would mean that in period 2, if she chose to consume this much here in period 2, this is all based off of part A, she would then have a consumption of 1 plus R times 40 plus her y2, which we know to be 90, which would give you 134. Because this is the same interest rate, this would be 1 plus 0.1, so equals 1.1, based off of the part A. All right, which is something that she can afford. So we can conclude that she just didn't prefer that bundle in vehicles, which is why she didn't choose it in period A. Okay? Because if she got more utility out of doing this, she would have chosen it in the first period before we activated this savings restraint and everything. So because of that, we can now assume that the policy made her worse off, right? Because she's forced to consume even less than she would have consumed in the second period. All right. So
Do you have to do any math for this problem, or can you just say, well, she just maximized her utility, and if she can't do that, then she'll have less?
I think that's a perfectly valid way of stating it. Yeah, you don't actually have to do math. Yes.
Yeah, what if you had to just take in, instead of using the assumption, like you solve for C1 and C2 and A, and then you just plug those into the utility function, and that'll give you some number that's higher than the
Yeah, you can also just plug those straight into the utility function. There's lots of ways you can do it. You didn't have to do math. You could just explain your logic that she had, like what Steven said, she had just maximized her utility. And so clearly this option she didn't choose because it didn't give her as much utility. Yes.
This problem basically proves that the government doesn't know how to invest money.
Under the assumptions in this model.
Are those assumptions right?
That's the question.
I don't know. It's a very simplified way of looking at the world. All right, so that was the last part of the Fisher two-period model. Any questions? So you're just going to follow this general pattern. Anytime it asks you for a level of savings or consumption that they're going to choose, take your utility function, which is going to have like a C1 and a C2 in it. Plug in your restraints so that you get everything in terms of C1. You don't have a C2 or an S in it anymore. Take the derivative, set it equal to 0, solve for C1. All right. Let's look at the first long answer now. Alright, so the first one asks, what can the Fed do? So it gives you, it's just like the first midterm. It gives you a bunch of equations in the start of the question. It gives you a bunch of assumptions, like prices are sticky in the short run. It tells you how much individuals are saving, or they're holding as currency, or they deposit into the bank. It tells you how much the bank is holding as deposits. And it says B is the monetary base, which is controlled by the Fed. So the first part is always going to be solve for R, Y, the money multiplier, and M. It's at least going to ask you to solve for R and Y. It might change up the setup and ask you to solve for like the currency ratio, or some other ratio, right? But it'll at least always ask you for R and Y. So based off all these things, we first got to solve for the money multiplier. All right. Who remembers how to calculate this? Michael.
Isn't that the one fraction of money they put in currency divided by the fraction of money that they put in deposits?
That is correct. So based off of what the information we have 3/9 or 6/9.
Kind of devious of them to use ninths.
It is when you can do 1/3 and 2/3.
Yes.
You get 0.5.
Either 30/90ths maybe. 60/90ths.
You get 100 over 200. Yeah. All right. Next thing you do is you solve for your little m. Who remembers the equation for little m? Michael.
Isn't it CR plus RR over 1 plus CR?
Flip it.
Dang it. Okay.
This is CR plus 1 over CR plus RR. I taught you this, Michael. I taught that class that day. All right, we know our CR is 0.5. Plug that in, plus 1 over 0.5. And then what is our RR? It's 0.1. Which gives you 1.5 over 0.6, which is 2.5. All right, that's your little m. Now we gotta solve for big M. How do we do this one, Michael?
M times the monetary base, like the little m times the monetary base.
That is correct. Little m times big B, which is 2.5 times, I believe it's what, 1,600? Yeah. So that gives you 4,000. Is that what it is? Now we just solve our IS LM model like you did in Right. So we take 4,000, which is big M. We set it equal to 2 or 20? 20. Y is 2R, which means then you solve for Y, which gives you 4,000 plus 20R. So you guys can see. So we take that Y and we set it equal to the other Y that we have. So we're going to take that Y we just solved for. We have 4,000 plus 20R. We set that equal to our consumption function, which is 20 plus 0.8 plus or times Y minus T, which we know what Y is in this instance, is 4,000 plus 20R. Then we have 400 in taxes, so we subtract that. Then on top of that, we add on 100 for minus 26R, which is our investment. And we add on 500, which is our G. Alright, this is just like midterm 2. And then you solve for y. Which I don't think I need to do. It's just algebra at that point. And then after you solve for y, solve for r. Use that simple equation, and that'll give you the r as well. Alright, does that make sense? So there's a little bit of things you gotta remember from your second midterm, that last part where you set this y equal to the other y that you have, which is consumption plus g plus I, and then you solve for your y's. And then plug in and solve for your r. Alright, that was part A. Let's look at part B. Suppose the collapse of a cryptocurrency exchange spooks investors, leading to an aggregate decrease in investment demand, such that the investment curve becomes I equals 600 minus 26R. Is there any scope to use monetary policy to stabilize output? If so, what can the Federal Reserve do to improve output in the short run? How much would they need to change the monetary base to make output as close to the initial equilibrium as possible? So, based off of the previous midterm, normally if you're taking a test for a class and ask you like 3 questions subsequently like this, you would probably assume that there is indeed a change. However, based off of the last midterm, I would not make such an assumption on the final. Because he loves, for some reason, to ask questions like, which one leads to a bigger decrease? And they both had the same. They were both the same. All right, so don't make any assumptions about that. And remember that if that is an answer you get, you might not be wrong, okay? So don't think you did something wrong if, like on the second midterm, you got 2 shocks that led to the exact same result and you asked which one was bigger, because they were both the same, all right? Which is my 2 cents right there. However, this one actually has a change in it. So you should first check and see if there is a drop. Squeaky thing.
That's a crazy hinges, bro.
I know. So you got to find the new equilibrium, which just means this equation, plug in the new investment equation into it. So instead of 800 minus 26R, you plug in 600 minus 26R. Solve for the new y, and you end up with 4,000. All right, that makes sense? So you just do that. Dr. Yim solves for r first. And he plugs that in and solves for y, which gives you a y of 4,000, which is a decrease from part A. So we know that there is an effect on the output in our economy here. So if we have a drop in output, do we need to shift the IS curve or the LN curve? What does anybody think? So notice that this is a question specifically about the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
What can?
The LM curve.
Yes. Why?
Because that one deals with monetary policy.
Exactly. So notice that this question is asking about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve only has control over that, the LM curve. All right. So you got to remember what they control and they can't control. The interesting thing about this one is, does anybody remember what the zero lower bound is?
Straight negative.
Negative interest rates, right? So in this question, you actually would need to increase the money supply and increase the monetary base to a point past r equals 0. You would go negative, but that's not feasible. So the answer to this one is there's nothing they can do to fully return back to the output, because that would probably be a negative interest rate, and that would break the zero lower bound. It's not just an assumption, it's true. You're not gonna have a negative interest rate. So, does that make sense, Michael?
In that case, would having a negative, I mean, if they could have a negative interest rate, would that basically just be the same thing as stimulus checks, that would then fall under the role of fiscal policy? Because a negative interest rate would be like, would that be like, instead of somebody like giving you dividends, you give them dividends?
Yes, it would just be, so it would be like if I took money from, like took out a loan for somebody, then when I paid it back, they would still pay me more money. Because the interest rate was negative, instead of me having to pay interest.
Like an investment.
So, yeah. Steven?
What if they engaged in quantitative easing?
What is quantitative easing, Steven?
Buying long-term securities instead of engaging in the open market operations that the Fed usually does.
Wasn't quantitative easing, didn't we talk about it having like digital assets as well? We were talking about that on one day.
Possibly. But they could do that.
I would stick with this. I would just notice that your interest rate would be forced to be below 0, and that's not feasible. Any other questions? Spencer, were you gonna say something?
You answer. I was just curious, like, why don't I just follow the answer key of just like the initial solving it, but you just plug it in the new interest rate that you get, right, and so find out the R is negative.
Yeah, you solve that for R and then plug that in
So
to find whatever Y is. All right, let's move on to part C. Part C says, it seems plausible that if investors become hesitant, individuals might also become more cautious about entrusting their income to the financial system. Suppose that in addition to the investment demand shock, individuals change their money holdings slightly, so they now keep 4/9. This is probably why.
Yeah, that does make sense now.
4/9 of their income as currency and deposit 5/9 into the bank. Is there any scope to use monetary policy to stabilize output? If so, what can the Fed do? Same questions as last time, just a different scenario. All right, so this time we need to solve for a new equilibrium, but before that we define our new money multiplier. So, Michael, how do you find the money multiplier?
CR plus 1 over CR plus RR.
Perfect. We need CR first because we've changed. So what's our new CR? It's going to be,
It's over 5/9.
is indeed 4/9 over 5/9. 0.8. Plug that in here. I'm just going to write down what it is. You get 2 because you get 0.8 plus 1 over 0.9. So, our new monetary, our new money multiplier is 2, and then we need to find big M with our new money multiplier, which is going to be 2 times 1,600, which is 3,200. That's our new big M. Solve for your Y. Answer this into your equation. Get that in terms of Y, set that equal to your consumption plus your investment plus your G, and then solve for Y. Same process as last time, all right? And get your interest rate. This time, you get an interest rate, after you solve all this, you get R equals 5.3 repeated, ... So, is monetary policy feasible here? I would think so. Do we have a negative interest rate? No. All right. So, we are allowed to think about monetary policy because we haven't run into the 0 bound yet. However, if we were to go all the way back to original output, which was 4,133, that would still require a negative interest rate. But one of the solutions that you can do is you could send this interest rate down to 0, and that'll get your output closer to the original one. You won't get it all the way back because you would still require a negative interest rate. But because this is positive, we have room to do at least something. Does that make sense? And then, let's see, does the question ask? Yes. Question asks you, how much should they change the monetary base? So, you would take your big M, you plug in a 0 interest rate, because that's what we can drive it down to. This is a 4. This is 20, this is a 0. So m would need to be 4,000 because this would just be 0. All right. And then you could solve for what your monetary base needs to be because you know your money multiplier is 2. So divide this by 2. That gives you your monetary base, which should be 2,000. All right. So they would need to increase the monetary base from 1,600 to 2,000. Yes.
Sorry, can you go over the intuition behind like why we knew we had to get the R back to 0 when we solved for that new M right there?
Yeah, so because when we solved the interest rate there, it was positive, we are allowed to use monetary policy. So in order to push the output in this part back up to what the original equilibrium was, you would need to decrease the interest rates. It would require you to go negative, which you can't do, so you just go back down to 0. So in order to get a 0 interest rate, this is what, you make that assumption here, and this is what the Fed needs to do, set big M and the monetary base to, in order to achieve that 0 interest rate. That's the economy. Does that make sense? All right, part D. Often we will see both Congress and the Fed engage in stabilization after a shock. Assume that the investment demand from B occurs, so we're having I's 600 minus 26R. People's money holding behavior did not change, with the legislature increasing government purchase by 200, so G now becomes 700 as opposed to 500. And then it asks you the exact same questions that it did in the previous 2 parts. So, you need to plug in this new G. You would need to plug in your new investments. The old investment's already in that one, so you just need to plug in your new G into that one. Solve for Y, and you actually end up with your original output. So you end up with 4,133. They stabilized it. So the answer would be nothing is required after the changes were implemented in Part D. The Fed wouldn't have to do anything. They wouldn't change the monetary base or the supply any suppliers. All right. So that was all of long answer 1. Any questions before we do the short answer?
I have a question.
What's up, Stephen?
Is long answer 3 something like that going to be on the test?
Long answer 3.
Dynamic general equilibrium. I thought that was not going to be on the test.
Did you say it's not going to be on the test?
It won't be on in long answer form, but there'll be short answer questions on it.
And I think you said too specifically about these that we could do them if we want. I guess that you said they might help with intuition with the short answers, but
Wait, you really said this wouldn't be on the test?
Long answer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So no long answer like don't need to.
No long answer like number 3
Oh,
on the long answer. The dynamic general equilibrium. Okay, before I do the short answer,
My question is, all they do is take 2. I guess my question is, if they took $200 from this side, why can't you just take $200 from that side and then have it be the same thing?
it's not the same thing. Are both sides look exactly the same?
No, but like algebraically, if you subtract 200 from one side and subtract 200 from the other, shouldn't it like?
Yeah, but not when you have like 6 different moving parts within each other. Like you have investment, you have consumption, you have government spending on the right side. So as a whole, it'll keep both sides the same, but it might do something to the other things in order to maintain that equality.
Okay, so like R. So in this case, R is what changes no matter what. Okay, cool.
Okay, before I do the short answer, how is everyone feeling about their House of Debt readings? They were due yesterday.
They do yesterday.
Are there exam questions on that? Or
Yes.
Exam questions on it, which is why I am asking yes.
Is this, I haven't looked at other exams yet, but is this the first year that he's doing House of Debt as a question? Or as
There was a question on my test. I think it was 20 points.
so there are examples in the.
Number
Well,
2 or 3. Yeah.
Last question is,
Okay, like if you
So of the 3 long answers, there's 1 House of Debt, there's 1 of the practice tests, and then 1. Did you tell us what the third one?
question or money supply?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be the two
Supply and then
lines.
what's the one?
It'll be microfinance consumption, and I think one of
Okay.
those two will be from the test. One.
Yeah, we don't know which one, but it's just one of those two will be for the test.
There's a 50% chance that
Monies
it
is one of them, yeah.
So much about this.
So I think the House of Debt question that's on one of the practice midterms, I think it's only worth 5 points. I can't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure when I took it, it was worth 20 points because I think it was just, I think they were the exact same setup as your guys. There were 3 long answer and that was one of them. Yeah.
Would that look like just like summarizing the points, or what would it? What would be the test about?
Yeah, so what he's going to ask you is something along the lines of, it's going to pose like a question. There's a couple options. One, he could pose a question. Be like, let's say our economy looks like this, or we have this issue going on with housing, or we have this issue with prices or whatever. What would the authors of House of Debt argue that you should do? All right? And for a question like that, there's not going to be like one correct answer because there was a whole long book and there's like a bunch of different ideas that you could take out of it. But it could be like, what would these authors argue you should do in this scenario? Okay. And there's going to be a whole wide range of answers that are acceptable. So don't worry about writing the right one. Just write something that you learned, that they argued about from the book. You could also ask something like, I think my question was, it was something along the lines of, what were the authors of House of Debt? What is their opinion on what caused the Great Recession? So you couldn't just write an arbitrary answer if you didn't read House of Debt because they actually have specific opinion. The authors have specific opinions on what actually caused the Great Recession. So you had to actually write down. There were like a lot of different points you could touch. But you had to write down something that the authors actually mentioned. All right, Stephen.
So let's say that you had a stack of exams with answers like this that you had to grade. What would be your methodology in grading those?
I'm not going to answer that because I'm not going to grade that question. So I don't want to lead you guys astray.
You already know.
Those two, or you just haven't been assigned it?
Well, the rotation we've been doing would have me grading the short answer and the first long answer. I'm not going to refute. Well, I also don't want to grade that question either. That one's very subjective. It's about subjective. So, yeah.
For the House of Debt question, will it be like multiple parts, or is it just like one lots of points loaded question?
It's just a very point-loaded question. I remember I wrote like over a page. I don't think that had to be over a page, but I remembered a lot and I didn't want to get docked for anything, so I just filled up the entire page with words from House of Debt.
You can that you hack.
Levered loss, levered loss, levered loss, levered loss.
That's Spencer.
Oh, I said, yeah, just say every word you possibly can from the book. Just try to prove.
I mean, if you could rewrite House of Debt on the exam, you could just staple it.
I'll donate my book.
Yeah. So here's the main thing, though. As long as you actually read House of Debt and you did the summaries and you answered the questions, you will be able to answer whatever question he throws at you. Because he's not going to ask you some minute niche detail from Chapter 7, page 131 about whatever they said, about what...
Page 131 is in Chapter 7.
Yeah, I didn't know if it wasn't. What chapter is it in then?
I think it actually might be.
It's pretty close. I don't know.
He's not going to ask you, like, what does securitization of MBS mean?
Will it ask about like bunking or whatever that was?
Oh, tranching?
Tranching. Wow, not bunking. Tranching.
No. It's not going to ask a specific, like, what does tranching mean? It's just going to be main ideas, general thoughts, or opinions that the authors wrote about over the course of the entire book. Okay? It's not going to pick, like, one chapter and be like, what do they say in this chapter? Because who remembers that? All right? So that should make you feel a little better. I remember I stressed about it, and it ended up being a lot easier than I thought it would be. I didn't know what you would ask. All right? So, if you have doubts about it, just go reread your summaries and your questions, and hopefully you actually did a good job. Okay? Any other thoughts before we continue? No? let's do, you guys want to do the short answer? Is that what I was hearing? All right, so number one, you guys want to do these because you found out I'm going to be grading them, huh?
Yeah.
Give the right.
These are also a little bit subjective. Well, some of them are, some of them aren't. Number 10 is, you will have a question like number 10. I think it's number 10. Yeah, it's number 10. So there's a free, everyone got 3 out of 30. As long as you write something.
What if you write no?
Why don't you write that and find out? All right, number one, when considering consumption, okay, I never knew how to pronounce it. Does Dr. Yim say it Keynes or Keynes or
Keynes.
Keynes. All right, Keynes observed several things in the data. Which of his observations would be violated if the consumption function looked like CY equals 0.8? Who's got a general idea? Landon, do you want to answer?
I don't know what APC is.
Average propensity to consume. So you have your MPC, which is your marginal propensity to consume. The APC is your average. Did he cover that?
I don't remember hearing about APC. It's on every other practice.
It's in the textbook, but
Don't read the textbook.
textbook.
Not read the textbook.
Well, I don't remember him
Let
saying
me know.
You hear what I said? The textbook. You just divide your consumption function by y. So, have you guys taken 380? Same thing. Instead of dividing by q to find your average,
And yeah, for taking in the derivative, you just divide by q.
yeah. Instead of taking the derivative to find the marginal cost, find the average cost, you just divide by q. Yeah. So the same thing. Instead of taking the derivative of your consumption function to find the marginal propensity to consume, you just divide it by y to find the average propensity to consume. All right. So, does anybody have any idea now what the answer would be? Michael? Why is it B?
Because it's the only one that wasn't correct.
But why is it the only one?
Because all the other ones were correct.
Why is it incorrect?
Because your APC for this one is constant. It doesn't change.
So what does that mean?
It means that every additional dollar into your income will go, your consumption will increase at the same ratio no matter where your Y is at.
And so what is the key assumption that Keynes makes?
Is that your average propensity to consume goes down as your income goes up.
That is correct. All right, so one of the assumptions is that as your income increases, your average propensity to consume should decrease. But because your APC is just constant, it does not change no matter how much income you have. All right, all the other ones, like Michael said, are indeed true. Your APC, yes.
Like option C, I feel like we didn't talk a lot about, like when we talked about consumption functions, like it's just the assumption that if you're getting more income, you're going to be saving more, or what's the intuition behind C?
It's also one of the assumptions in the Keynes model that as your income rises, your savings.
Just one of the assumptions.
Yes.
Well, if your consumption is going down, then your savings is going up.
And consumption is constant because it's just the point of there's not any other.
The average propensity to consume is constant because you'd calculate that by taking your consumption function and dividing by y. That just gives you 0.8.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just confused on why if y will increase in the denominator, see the decrease.
So when you divide by y, you have a y in the numerator and a y in the denominator, so they would cancel. You're just left with 0.8. So no matter what your y is, your APC is just going to be 0.8. You can't change it.
It becomes true if you add something to it. If it's like 12 plus 0.8 times y, then your APC goes down as y goes up.
Yes, that is why you will always see a consumption function that starts like 20 plus 0.8 or 10 plus 0.7. Because what Jacob just said is indeed true. Because now you have a y on both. The y's on this one will cancel, but you'll have a 20 or whatever over y. And so as your income increases, your consumption will increase. Great comment. All right, does that make sense? I know he didn't teach it, but that should be all you need to know, hopefully. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he threw something like a multiple choice question on that. But you should all understand the intuition for it now, okay? All right, number 2. Suppose the following individual follows the life cycle hypothesis. Stephen, what is the life cycle hypothesis? Tell us.
And smooth that consumption.
You are going to want to smooth that consumption, all right? So they're going to have the same consumption in every period if they can. So that is the first thing you need to know in order to do the short answer, because there, if you notice on the if you not look at the answers, but you're looking at the test, there is nothing in the consumption bar. Okay, so you need to solve for all those consumptions. Their consumption. So in order to do that, you would need to sum up all of their income, and then you also add on that $10 of wealth or whatever that they have in period 1, which gives you 100. Divide that by 5, and you get 20 is going to be their consumption, their smooth consumption for each period. So you can fill in 20 for each of the consumption periods. And then, in order to find their wealth, you just need to take their income and subtract their, let's see, let's go. Take what the wealth that they start with and their income, and you add it together, and you subtract their consumption. That gives you their wealth. So
You add their previous wealth?
yes, so you take their previous. So you take all of. So let's say we're solving for their wealth in period 2. Take their income from period 1, their wealth from period 1, and their consumption from period 1. Add their income and wealth together, subtract their consumption. That gives you their wealth in period 2. And then you just repeat that process for all of them until you finish, fill out the table. Yeah.
Sorry, this might be a dumb question.
It's never a dumb question.
This one might be. How do you get to 20 for the consumption again?
Yeah, so you sum up, so at the start, he's probably gonna give you a table. You sum up all of their income that they have over their lifetime, as well as the wealth that they have over their lifetime, divide by the number of periods that there are. Because the life cycle hypothesis makes the assumption that people are going to want to have makes the assumption that people want to smooth their consumption.
Okay.
So they want to have the same amount of consumption each period. So you can just divide by the number of periods.
And what are the other hypotheses that you brought up, or is this kind of?
I think that's really the only one you need to remember.
Okay.
Smooth consumption. I don't know why he doesn't just write wants to smooth their consumption, because
They follow the life cycle hypothesis. Like, it's my religion.
yeah, it sounds like my 2nd grade science class.
The life cycle.
Anyways, all right. Number 3 is this whole page, a question that spans like the whole page, and then it just asks you what the endogenous variables are. So all that's asking for is what are the variables that the household is going to choose. All right, so they're going to choose their consumption, they're going to choose their savings, and that's that. So just make sure you write down the consumption and the savings every time period. All right.
This would be different if it was firms, right? We would just swap it.
Say that again.
Like, so at the bottom, it's like, what variables would households choose, endogenous variables? But if it was firms, then we'd swap it, and I'd be like, okay, they're
I
choosing
don't
L.
think he asks you questions like this about firms.
Okay, good to know.
So why is it not the third saving is S3 T plus 1? Is that supposed to be T plus 2?
What was your question?
And why does it show? Why does it say like S2 T plus 1 and S3 T plus 1? Because that's saving.
Mine has a 2 on it.
I got two.
The
Are you
answer.
talking about why the answer says that, but in the question?
Yeah. Why? Yeah.
Why
Why
does
does
it
it?
T plus
answer
2?
says S3 T plus 1, but I think it's supposed to be ST.
Yeah, I think that is supposed to be a 2. That's the answer.
I don't think that beta is supposed to be to the L either.
Yeah, I don't think the beta is supposed to be the L either. Yeah, because based off of the given information, S3 sub T plus 2 is what it says in saving borrowing. So I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be a 2 in the answer. So there's multiple typos in here. All right. The point is, just write down all the consumption variables and all the saving variables, because that's what households choose. Michael.
And that's what they choose because that's what's in the utility equation. They're not choosing like their labor.
Well, is there anything?
It's kind of silly that the utility function is just all those variables.
Yeah. That's what they choose, because if they were to maximize, they would have no regard for how much they work. It's not in their function. So, yes.
And the exogenous variables, would it just be labor in all of the time periods?
It's all the non-endogenous variables. So, all right. Let's move on to number 4. There will be a question like this on the final. So, it asks for the reserve ratio for the bank, and it tells you that the leverage ratio is 20% or 5 to 1. All right. So, in order to do this, you need to fill out the rest of this balance sheet. All right. So, since our leverage ratio is 20 to 1, that means our total assets are going to be 100, because that's the equity capital. So your total assets equals your equity capital times your leverage ratio. All right, I would remember that equation. Total assets equals leverage ratio times equity slash capital. So on the left-hand side, we know that the reserves, the loans, and the investments need to sum up to 500, which means reserves is going to be 10. All right? So that's the first thing you have to do. And then the other thing that you need to remember is that on a balance sheet, like it says in its name, the left side needs to be balanced with the right side. So if your total assets are 500, that means your total liabilities needs to be. So let's hear it, Hiram. 500. Yep, 500. So that would imply that deposits are 200, because 500 minus 200 minus 100 is 200. All right? And then you would just use all that information and calculate the reserve to deposit ratio, which comes out to 5%. All right, does that make sense? I would remember leverage ratio and how to find total assets and capital. It could be the other way around. He could give you all the assets, but your equity capital is missing. All right? You could have like a blank in deposits and a blank in equity and capital, but all your assets are there. And he gives you the leverage ratio, and you just have to switch up your order. All right? True or false? Taking out debt during college and consuming more than your income because you know you will have a high-paying job in the future is inconsistent with the life cycle hypothesis. False. Why is it false?
That's exactly what
Let's smooth out your consumption.
Smoothing it.
Yeah, so Jacob explained to me how that's smoothing your consumption.
Because you currently don't make a lot of money, and you're borrowing from the future to consume more now because you know you're going to get paid better in the future.
You're hoping you're going to get paid more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it
That
says.
is.
It says you know.
Does it say you know?
Because you know, yeah, it's true. I'm confident. It says
Well,
you know.
if you know for a fact you will make more in the future, then yeah, you should take out a load of debt right now.
Smooth it.
However, that's not something we know. So. But yes, it's false. This is literally smooth consumption. All right. Number 6, if people become scared of the financial system during recessions and put more money under the mattress and less in the bank, now I'm going to pause. What does that mean about the currency ratio and the deposit ratio? What's going to happen?
Ratio's going up.
Deposit ratio? Down. Perfect. What does this imply about the ability of monetary policy to stabilize the economy? And it tells you to assume the reserve to deposit ratio is less than 1. All right. So, if more people, let's just think about this intuitively. You don't technically need to do any math. If more people are hoarding money and they're keeping it under their bed and they're keeping it as cash, what does that imply about the total circulation of money in the economy?
It's going down.
Why is it going down?
banks have less money to loan out, so the money multiplier is shrinking.
Exactly.
The
So-
monetary policy.
Yeah, perfect. So you could either take the derivative of your money multiplier and show that it's negative, or you can just intuitively explain that. That is also valid. You don't have to do any math. Right? Remember, one thing important is that banks don't just hold money. Banks are constantly lending out your money, and then they pay back your money with interest, right? So the more money banks have, the more money banks can lend out, and the more money will be circulating in the economy. So if people are hoarding money, not putting in the banks, less money, therefore circulation goes down. Right? Money multiplier goes down because you can no longer create as much money. All right, does that make sense? So what would that imply about the ability of monetary policy to stabilize the economy?
It's just not effective because I guess in the House of Debt it says that like the Fed can only influence bank reserves, not like currency in circulation. And so if the bank doesn't have deposits, they're probably going to keep the reserves given by the Fed instead of
So it would make monetary policy less effective. There's just less money circulating around. They can't do as much. All right. True or false? The currency deposit ratio must be less than or equal to 1. Why is it false?
You could keep 2/3 of your money and deposit 1/3 of your money, and that would give you a currency deposit ratio of 2.
Great example. Alright, so if you have a question that's like, true or false, this must be less than or equal to 1, or this must be greater than 1, you could just find a scenario where that is not true. And that gives you, if you just find 1, then it's automatically false. Alright, in the Fisher two-period model, how will an increase in the interest rate affect consumption in the second period if an individual retires in the second period and has no income? Do we want to share what they think the answer is? Go up. I will go up, Stephen. And don't.
The interest rate is higher than in the first period, you're going to save more, and then you'll have more savings to get in the second period.
So it's based on
the answer key as a graph. Do not.
Not need to graph. That's just for intuitive purposes. If it doesn't tell you to graph something, don't waste your time graphing, unless it helps you. Right? Number 9, consider a Fisher two-period model where y1 equals 0, y2 equals 10, r equals 5%, and the individual faces a borrowing constraint s is greater than or equal to 0. What will consumption be in period 1 and period 2? So you don't have a utility function, nor do you need a utility function, because if a person has no income in the first period and they can't borrow, that just means that they die. Honestly, will die, but
yeah, if you put 0 for both until they're dead in the second period, is that like?
no, because our periods could be what, 1 day? You're not gonna die if you don't eat something. So the correct answer is just to say that their consumption in period 1 will be 0 because they cannot borrow and they have no income. And then their consumption in period 2 will be their entire income. So C2 is 10. So it's 0 and 10. Yes.
So just intuitively, C2 is 10, which is also equal to the income in period 2 because there's nothing to build interest on from period 1.
Yeah, so you can only build interest on savings. Income, if you're in period 1 and you have income in period 2, it's money you don't have yet. So you can only garner interest in period 2 if you had savings in period 1.
Not if you just had income in period 1.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. So if you did not spend all of your money in period 1 and you saved some of it, then in period 2 you would generate interest on those savings from period 1. But they do not have any savings from period 1, nor do they have any income. So there's nothing to generate interest on. And then question number 10 is your open-ended question that as long as you don't write no on, you will get points. All right. If you we want to do the short answer on the other test? Is there a long answer you guys feel concerned about? You guys tell me. We still have 45 minutes. We still have plenty of time to work through a lot of other problems.
We'll do the short answer on the last one. Just like
On the last practice final? We can.
I have a random question that maybe doesn't matter.
Let's hear it, Steven.
I'm wondering.
Hang on
why-
1 second. Are you talking about the spring 2024?
yes.
Right. Go ahead, Steven.
I'm wondering why in long answer 2, like the first thing we did, like why is there a utility function? I mean, it's given. But why is it log consumption 1 plus log consumption 2? Why is it not discounted in period 2?
Because this is not 382.
Okay, so don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Yeah. That's, you start discounting your future earnings in 382. We haven't gotten to that point yet, so there's no reason to.
Because that's 2.
Is anyone else taking 382? Spencer? You?
How? Isn't that the second class after this one?
It's after 380.
Oh, yeah, fair
This
enough.
one's not pre-req.
That makes sense. I got you.
Yeah.
Alright, wait a minute.
They kind of make people in succession, but they're not.
All right, we're gonna do the short answer on the spring 2024 final exam for Jacob's request. All right. So number 1, dynamic general equilibrium. So this might be a question you guys might have since he said he's not gonna put a Doge question on the long answer, right? Short answer. So in the dynamic general equilibrium model, the individual saves when they are young by purchasing capital as an asset. Why is it indexed by t plus 1 if it is purchased when young? Anybody have any idea?
Because it can only be used in that time period.
That is true, it can only be used in time t plus 1, but why, Hiram?
They've got no wealth in period 1, I'm assuming, so they can only accumulate capital throughout their life. No? Okay, that was a good shot.
I liked it. That's so good.
It's clear to the educated reader.
It's clear to the educator.
Let's hear it, Steven.
Maybe they like invested in period 1 into building like a large factory that takes a long time to produce stuff.
So it's kind of a trivially stupid answer. The answer is they purchased it and production ends in that time period. You can't purchase something in time period t and then use it in production in time period t.
Oh.
So it's like a discrete time. It's not a continuous time frame. So anything you purchase in time period t has to be used in the next period.
So it's like you can only take one action per turn.
It's not necessarily one action, but per each.
Oh, I like that though, yeah. You bought it now. Yeah.
Things that have been accumulated in one period cannot be used in the same period because then that distorts the idea of what time means when you have discrete time periods.
We need to go to the next time.
Because who's to say you didn't create something and then you bought it?
Right, it's like you play down your creature, your little Pokemon, and it can't attack till the next turn. It's kind of like that.
I don't know Pokemon. Sure.
I like that though. That was nice.
All right.
That's stuck in the brain. For sure now. It's like a Pokemon card.
Spencer, yes.
What question was that? Sorry.
That was number 1 on the short answer of the spring 2024.
That, yes. Okay.
All right, number 2, we are following the life cycle hypothesis, which means smooth consumption. All right, that's better be ingrained in your guys' brains for Saturday or Monday. Okay, we follow the life cycle hypothesis. What is consumption wealth for each period of this individual's life? So exact same thing. Sum up your income. He has no wealth. at the start. So just sum up your income. Divide it by 4 this time, because there's 4 time periods, gives you 30 in each time period for consumption, and then sum your income and your wealth for period 1, subtract your consumption for period 1, gives you your wealth for period 2. Follow by induction until the end. Perfect. Questions? Same thing as last time. Number 3 says, suppose they cannot borrow. What does consumption and wealth look like in each time period now? All right, this one's a little different. So in the first period, they will choose to consume their entire income because it's still the same idea as smooth consumption. They want it to be as smooth as possible, and so in order to make a bar graph of all your consumption, in order to make that as smooth as possible, you need to spend everything you had since you don't have, you're getting a lot more money in the next time periods in income. All right, so they would choose to spend everything in the first time period. And then after that, after they get money, is when you would choose to just sum up all your income for the last 3 periods, divide it by 3 this time, and that becomes your consumption for each of the next 3 periods. And then you calculate your wealth the same as before. All right. So the process for solving these is always going to be, if there's no borrowing constraint or anything, just sum up your income and your wealth that you have at the start, divide by the number of periods. If as long as they're following the life cycle hypothesis, divide by your number of periods, that gives you consumption. Sum your income and your wealth for period 1, subtract your consumption for period 1, that gives you your wealth for period 2, and then repeat for each period. All right, hopefully that makes sense and it's not very complicated.
So when it says that we can't borrow, that just means it can't be below 0. Wealth can't.
Yeah, you can't have negative wealth or anything. It also means they can't spend money they don't have. So the reason that matters for number 3 is because if you were to just follow the smooth consumption hypothesis to a T, that would imply that they are spending money, they're consuming money in period 1 that they don't have, which is not wise. Right? All right, number 4. Over the years, people have moved more of their purchasing to debt cards. I don't know if that's supposed to mean debit cards. I don't know. I don't know what a debt card is. Maybe it's a new name for a credit card.
Yeah.
I thought that's how.
Jim has some strong opinions on
That is not how you spell debit. I and debit. The funny thing is, debt and debit mean the same thing. So.
Yeah.
I thought debit meant left.
Fact check me, Steven.
Debits and credits. And debits means you owe somebody something.
And credits means
That they owe you.
So I guess debit is just a positive connotation. No. Number 4, leading to a lower cash holding. So if people move more of their purchasing to debit cards and online transaction and they lower their cash holding, what will this do? Increase the money multiplier, decrease the money multiplier, not affect the money multiplier, or will it violate classical dichotomy?
Hate that word.
So remember, classical dichotomy is what? Who remembers?
That fake things can't affect real. Is that it?
Nominal things
Nominal
can affect
thing,
real
yeah.
things,
Yeah.
and vice versa. There's no.
Yeah, the nominal's fake.
All right. Forget that's even an answer. All right. So will it? Who remembers money multiplier is this right here. So if people are increasing, if they're decreasing this, what is that going to do? Go up, Stephen.
You say why? Because if you take the limit as ER goes to 0.
One way you can figure it out is you just take. Do you guys remember when I took the derivatives of everything when I taught section afternoon?
I think one limit on
Second section. One way to just remember is that this becomes, the derivative is negative. If you take the derivative of the multiplier with respect to the currency ratio, it's negative. All right. So that means a decrease in the currency ratio will lead to an increase in the money multiplier and vice versa. All right.
You need the quotient rule for that.
Not.
was that one. That was the ugly
No, I didn't use the quotient. You would have known if you came to class, Stephen. I did not use the quotient.
negative exponent product.
I used the product rule.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. So you do need one of those rules.
Yeah, but you don't have to use the quotient rule if people don't know it, which I find the quotient rule is the hardest for people to remember. So just make that a negative exponent and use the product rule. It's a lot simpler.
Amen.
All right, number 5, balance sheet question. If the reserve requirement is 2% and the reserve ratio is 5%, how much money does the bank have in investments? All right, this could be another type of question. It doesn't give you anything about leverage ratio. All right. However, look at the balance sheet. What is the first thing you guys notice that would be of importance?
The whole liability side.
The whole liability side. What does that tell us?
The whole asset side.
We know what the whole asset side should sum to. All right, so we know their assets needs to be 1,400. All right, first thing to notice. That being said, is it important for this question to know that? No, it's not. But you should always look at something like that. So if the reserve ratio is 5%, what does that tell us? What does that mean?
5% of your deposits.
It's not 20.
Yeah. So if the reserve ratio is 5%, that means 5% of your deposits are in reserves.
I mean 50.
So you get 50. Right? Because if you take, so your total deposits is 1,000, take 5% of that, you get 50. Which means your reserves are going to be 50 plus 800, which is 850, and then now you subtract, you actually know, you subtract your 1,400 minus 850, and you get 550. All right, the bottom one. So he could ask you something about the leverage ratio, which is the formula for leverage ratio.
Assets equals capital times leverage ratio.
Total assets equals your leverage ratio times your capital / equity.
So I just divide it over.
So yeah, you can divide it over. So yeah, you get your leverage ratio is your total assets divided by your capital equity. Do some algebra there.
If you said 7 instead of 7 to 1 for problem 6, would you get it wrong?
So that'd be unfortunate.
What does 7 mean?
Because the leverage ratio is 7.
Well, that's not a ratio.
Yeah, it is at 7 to 1.
All right, let's work. Okay, what is the bank's leverage ratio? I didn't realize this was the next question. So, given that I just told you the formula for leverage ratio, what would be? What would that be?
70 to 10.
It's not 7 to 1. All right, so always just write the 2 1. All right, get your fraction. 1/7, 7 to 1. All right, if it's 1/8, 8 to 1. If it's 1/100th, 100 to 1. All right, this is the exact same question. Number 7 is the exact same one we just talked about the last one. So,
See it again.
so except it is A this time.
Whoa.
So the violation is that with this consumption function, your average propensity to consume decreases as Y. That is the violation. All right. Number 8 is also what question we just talked about on the last one. This one just has a graph, but it's the same thing. They're going to consume more in the second period. All right. Number 9. The Doge model, where we consider a representative firm's problem, and then it's a lot of reading. It asks you to write the firm's profit maximization problem, and you don't need to solve for anything. All right, so who in here has taken 380? Everybody? Or taking it right now? All right, this is the exact same question that you answered a billion times in 380. All right, you take your production function and you subtract their cost, and you write max in front of it. All right.
I didn't know that.
Do we need to go over anything more than that? Perfect. And then another Doge question. It says a bunch of stuff and then asks you to write down the individual's budget constraint when they were young from the baseline model, as well as the budget constraint when they were young, accounting for their human capital accumulation decision. Jacob?
I don't like that word. Human capital.
What's that?
It's kind of getting slavery vibes, and I'm not into that. Just put it out there. Honest thoughts.
I'm glad you're against that.
Yeah. Just want to make that clear. I don't like this.
Alright, who remembers the homework that covered this? I believe it was problem set 11. What? I remember.
I didn't do it.
So there will be, he said there won't be a long answer, there will just be short answers. So I would recommend, how many didn't do problem set 11? You're not gonna get in trouble, you can raise your hand. Alright. So if you didn't do problem set 11, or you don't remember anything from problem set 11, or you just want to review again, I would highly recommend looking at the lecture notes for problem set 11. That being said, I would also highly recommend looking at the lecture notes for every chapter that is going to be covered. So when I took this test, I found them to be very helpful, and they matched a lot of what was on the tests. Specifically, there was a problem on the homework that was also worked out identically in the lecture notes. So I would take a hint there and just remember. Okay.
Quick question on like the makeup of the exam. Is it like the 10, 30% and the
I think it's exactly the same.
Okay, and then just three long answer questions?
Is that what you said, Hiram?
Yeah.
So what? It's a house of debt, long answer, a long answer from one of the practice midterms. Is that what you said? And then one from the homework.
No.
I think the other one's just one new
Random.
It's just a new one, but they'll both be like one like that where we use like currency and stuff, and then the other one will be like the consumption in the 2 periods, like those style problems.
Yes.
Can you kind of explain number 10?
Yeah, I was going to. Alright, so the hint says write 2 equations, run for the model in the homework. This is why I recommended you just remember what it says in the homework and lecture notes. So the first one from the homework is W sub t. This is going to be your consumption, first period, sub t, plus your capital to the second period. I would just remember that. Okay? And then the second one asks you to make an adjustment to this first one. So all it's saying is based off of what it said, where it says that individuals can choose to invest in human capital by paying tau tuition for each unit of human capital. All you're going to do is you're going to take that, instead of just W on the left side, you now have H if you're investing in human capital. And that is equal to tau, the tuition that you pay, times that human capital. So that's all you
Wait, okay. But we just said a little bit ago that like you can't use capital in the period that you buy it. But this equation is literally having them spend money on human capital and then get a wage according to that human capital that they just accumulated. Like in the same period.
Yeah. So I guess my answer to that would be just read the question where it says this human capital makes them more productive laborers leading to higher wage income, and it gives you what you need to write on the left side. So it seems a bit contradiction. But that's what the answer is. I don't have a better answer for that.
That just seems really sus.
It does seem a bit sus.
Yeah, a little dishonest.
Yeah,
To me.
dishonest.
Yeah.
Alright. Do we, yes.
In that question where it says that the old cannot invest in human capital, does that mean that it would be like an H2? Is that what it's trying to say with the equation?
All right, we've got 28 minutes. Do we want to do more short answer? Do we want to do more long answer? Do we want to do nothing?
Just talk. How are you?
Yeah, we can. I was gonna say let's talk about our feelings.
Yeah, therapy's expensive. Let's just do it now.
You guys, this review is for you guys. Like I said, I'm not taking this test. I got other tests to take. So, would anybody like? Yes.
Can you do the long answer on this, number 1?
Yes. You say number 1. We can. Let's talk about application and micro foundations of money. All right, the land of Dodd and the land of Frank. These are two countries that are identical in every way except for one. The land of Dodd, in the land of Dodd, the government requires a reserve requirement of 10%. In the land of Frank, they require a reserve requirement of 20% because they're a little more leery. I don't really know what leery means, but
Suspicious.
Yeah, suspicious.
a little sus. Banks adhere to these requirements and do not hold more money in reserves than they are required. All right, so they do the minimum. Individuals also keep 1/3 of their income as cash, so the ratio is 1/2. All right. So, what is the money multiplier in the land of Dodd and the land of Frank? All right, so if we wanted to calculate the land of Dodd's money multiplier, this is the equation right here, is CR plus 1 over CR plus RR. Yeah, that's a typo. If you keep 1/3 of your income as cash, then the currency ratio should be. No, it shouldn't.
Yeah,
No, that's right, because it'd be 1/3 over 2/3. Yeah, because it's 1/3 currency ratio over your deposits is 1/3 over 2/3. So you get 1/2. So if we plug in here, we get 1/2 plus 1 over 1/2 plus 1/10, because in the land of Dodd, they're required to keep 10% as the reserve requirement, and that gives you 5/2, which is 2.5. As well as in the land of Frank, the same thing, except we have a 1/5 because they're required to keep 20%. All right, so you get 2.14. You get 1/2 plus 1 over 1/2 plus 1/5, which is 2.14. So those are the money multipliers for both. Part B, assume both economies are well approximated by the ISLM model, where the LM curve is given by MOP and in equilibrium with no shocks. Gives you P, gives you Y, gives you R, gives you the money multiplier times B, which is M. How big is the monetary base in both of the countries? So the first thing that you have to do is you take your LM curve, which is given by M over P equals Y minus 10R. Right, that's your LM curve. Set it equal to, let's see, what does this do? Your,
Just plug in money multiplier times B for M.
yeah.
Solve.
From this, you can plug in, you have M over, what's B, 10?
Yeah.
Equals Y 1,000. Minus 10. And then you solve for B. Oh, sorry, not B, M. And then,
With the -1?
with what?
The -1?
Where?
Oh,
This is a poorly drawn arrow. Is that better? It's a blunt arrow.
That's a sign.
And then it gives you the equation M equals the money multiplier times B. So if you're solving for B, then you can just divide your M by your money multiplier for each one, and that gives you the monetary base, which is big B. Right?
Can you do the algebra for those?
It's in the notes. Alright, part C asks you to draw ISLM model. However, this is a very simple one. It doesn't ask you to draw all 5 graphs. It asks you just to draw the middle one. Alright. So how would the LM curve shift? I don't know what that means.
It would shift up and to the left because the monetary supply on the graph to the right would shift to the left as well, and so that would just move it up.
Yeah, so quick note, you can just say it would shift left. It's not actually shifting up.
That's true.
It just looks like it, but it's not. It's an illusion. So you can just say the LM curve is shifting left or right, or the IS curve is shifting left or right. It just, that means the intersection either goes up or down. So yes, an increase in P will shift the LM curve. He says back, but that seems a little, which way that is, who knows. It'll shift left. All right. Part D, the countries want to use monetary policy to offset this shock and mitigate the drop in output. How much must the Fed increase the monetary base in the land of Dodd and in the land of Frank? Which country must have more aggressive policy and why? So who remembers the process for solving these? This is like a midterm 2 question using facts for midterm 3. What you will do is, if you want, you need to solve for the new money supply given your Y's and R's before the shock that you had. Right? So you will use this, you plug in 20 right here for your P, and you keep your R the same and your Y the same, and you solve for your new M, and then that comes out to whatever it is, and then you just do the same process as in part A or part B, where you use the equation to find the monetary base, which is big M equals your money multiplier times your monetary base, right? And then you'll solve for each of them. And then you'll just have to know, so for the land of Dodd, you get 7,600. For the land of Frank, you get 8,000 something. And in the land of Frank, they have to act more aggressively because they have to increase the monetary base by more in order to offset the same shock. What was that?
They have a lower money multiplier.
That's a big idea right there.
They gotta throw more stuff at it.
They gotta throw more stuff at it. Part E. Suppose in the land of Dodd they make the change to the monetary base, but it doesn't end up mitigating fully the impact on output. Give 2 reasons why this might be. And you're assuming prices are sticky in the short run, so your P is still 20. All right, who has any idea why this might occur? Jacob, I feel like you have a great idea for why this might occur.
No, that's true. Because even if you increase the monetary base, it doesn't always get used in the same way. Like if you increase the monetary base, then people might save or not deposit into the banks in the same way. And so that's going to make it so that there actually isn't this increase in money supply that you thought there was going to be. So, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's good. You touched one of the points. So people might change their currency ratio. They might start putting less money in the bank and keeping more money under their bed or something. I don't know. Which then will have a negative effect on the money multiplier, right? Or the banks could increase their reserve deposit ratio as well. That would be the other one. Yes.
It seems like a lot of finals are calling back like midterm stuff. Would you say anything's gonna call back like midterm 1?
What was
Other than general items?
on midterm 1? I can't even remember. Midterm 1 was, no, that was all about unemployment, and I don't really think there's anything for midterm 1 other than like you gotta know what the MPC is. You know, you learned about that. You have to know what capital are. But it draws a lot more on midterm 2 with like the ISLM model and stuff. So I don't think it'll ask. Like this question was, can you solve a midterm 2 type question, but given facts about banks and how they spend their money and stuff like that? There shouldn't be anything like that for midterm 1. Because I don't really think anything we've learned applies to midterm 1. So.
Oh, we failed midterm 1 if I took it again.
What was that?
I said I'd probably fail midterm 1 if I took it again right now. I don't even remember anything that was on that.
MTA, and I don't remember it. I think that was the last question for number 1. Yeah. to request another problem. Thanks, I'm Steven.
If you have a compact set.
Talk about compact sets, I can talk about that.
You guys said those words and those words. They scare me.
Weierstrass M test.
No. Can't. Class? I have no idea. Yes, I have no idea. Honestly, Dr. Hume doesn't really talk to me, so. He just asked me if I could do it, and I do it. I don't really know the administrative side of the grades, other than I grade.